All right, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great week. Today we're continuing our BCBA exam practice series where I'm going through a full BCBA exam question by question and breaking down the questions how I think you should think about it when you take your real exam. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe if you do enjoy these videos. We have our 5th edition task list study guide available for sale. I'll put that link in the comments and descriptions below. This exam will be for sale starting Monday, so be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions or comments, please email me or leave them below. I'd love to help. Other than that, keep working hard, keep studying hard, and let's get to our questions. So 71, Brian's client just got a job as a cashier at the local grocery store. Brian needs to train his client on the skills he would need to do the job, but Brian wants to make sure he trains in a way that will encourage generalization. Which of the following would least likely help with generalization? Okay, so generalizing is a major component to any skill acquisition plan, to any behavior reduction plan. It's one of our dimensions. It's arguably the most important thing we should be trying to train for when teaching our clients. Because if we're not generalizing, we're not really doing our job. If they can't do it outside the learned environment, okay, it's not much use to them. So in this scenario, Brian's client is going to be a cashier at the local grocery store. The question wants to know, what is the least likely way to encourage generalization for skills needed as a cashier? Okay, so we're looking for ways we're going to encourage generalization, right? Because it's a least likely question, right? Be very careful about the nots, the least, okay? Read your questions carefully, take your time, and identify what the question is asking. So we need the least likely way to help with generalization. A, Brian should encourage the client's parents and siblings to practice with the client. Would this encourage generalization? Absolutely, right? If you're the primary therapist or the RBT is the primary therapist, and they're the ones delivering the feedback, delivering the SDs, and nobody else ever delivers the SDs or practices, okay, how is Brian's client going to prepare for all the different people and all of the different interactions at the grocery store? So A would encourage generalization. B, the environment is set up so that the client comes in contact with several different stimuli he might encounter while working at the store. Again, would definitely encourage generalization. If we control the environment too much when teaching a skill, we're doing a disservice because we know the natural environment is not necessarily always controllable. So the more loosely we train, okay, and the more different stimuli we use to train, the more we will encourage generalization. So B is good as well. What about C? The learning environment is distinctive from the actual store. Slowly, Brian makes the environment mimic the store. Will it help generalization if we make the learning environment different or distinctive from the actual store? No, we want the learning environment to be as close as possible to the actual store. So although slowly Brian makes the adjustment, right? If we start as being distinctive from the actual store, okay, we're not encouraging generalization. So far C is the least likely to encourage generalization. Always read all your answer choices. You're looking for the best answer. D, the client should create a list of key things to remember that he could bring to the store. Basically, the client is creating a list of prompts to remind him what he needs to do at the store. That would absolutely encourage generalization. Therefore, C is the least likely way to encourage generalization by making the learning environment different or distinctive from the actual environment. We want that learning environment to mimic the real environment as much as possible. 72. Dave is using a token economy to reinforce his client as his client completes math problems. Dave delivers a token every couple of problems that his client completes independently. What best describes this type of reinforcement? Okay, pretty basic reinforcement question, general reinforcement question. Dave is giving a token every couple of problems when his client completes them independently. What kind of reinforcement is Dave giving? Is this reinforcement continuous? Is it intermittent? Is it natural? Or is it non-contingent? Well, we know it's not continuous. Continuous reinforcement is FR1, right? The fixed ratio 1, where every response is reinforced. In this scenario, it's going to take a couple of problems to get reinforced. It's not continuous. It's not natural, right? Because we have a certain schedule we're on, okay? And then it's not non-contingent because it is contingent on the client completing some problems. Remember, a contingency is an if-then statement. If you do this, then you get this. First you do this, then you get this. Tokens are contingent on the client completing problems independently, okay? So we've ruled out A, C, and D. That leaves us with B, intermittent. Intermittent reinforcement, right? Means non-continuous. Means it's not going to occur every response, okay? So pretty straightforward reinforcement question. Again, not every question on the exam is going to be the hardest question ever, right? There are going to be some pretty straightforward, easy questions. When you get those, don't overthink them, okay? Answer them to the best of your ability, right? Answer them and then move on, okay? Don't overthink the easy questions. 73. Tony wants to reduce the number of M&Ms he eats each day. He starts taking percentage of occurrence data on the number of M&Ms he takes when he passes by the bowl at work. Today, he walked by the bowl 20 times, took 8 M&Ms, avoided looking at the bowl 3 times, and walked away 4 times. Based on the number of times he walked by the bowl, what percent of occurrences did Tony not take an M&M? Okay, a lot going on in this question, right? Don't get bogged down or confused by details, okay? Understand what the question is asking and answer just that question. The question wants to know what percent of occurrence did Tony not take an M&M based on the number of times he walked by the bowl. So start there. He walked by the bowl 20 times, okay? So we now have our first number. He walked by the bowl 20 times. How many times did Tony not take an M&M? Okay, the percent of occurrences, there was 20 of occurrences. So what percent of 20 did Tony not take an M&M? So we know he took 8 M&Ms. So 8 out of 20, he did take an M&M. Therefore, 12 out of 20, he did not. So to find the percent of occurrences, you just find a percentage, right? So all we're going to do is divide 12 by 20, and we're going to get what? We're going to get 60%, okay? Very simple percentage question. Don't get bogged down by these other numbers. Simply answer the question using the data they give you, okay? We know our percent of occurrences. We know there were 20 occurrences of him walking by the bowl. 8 times he took an M&M, meaning 12 times he did not. 12 divided by 20 is 60%. Tony did not take an M&M 60% of the time based on the times he walked by the bowl. 74. Tina is a 4th grader in a general education classroom. 2 months ago, Tina would get up from her seat several times during class for attention. A behavior plan that utilized extinction was put in place, and the behavior went away. Last week, Tina got up from her seat 10 times in one class. What is the most likely explanation for the behavior occurring? Okay, so what do we know? We know Tina would get up from her seat for attention, and a behavior plan put that on extinction, and the behavior was extinguished. Great. All of a sudden, the behavior comes back. What is that called? Okay, what is the most likely explanation for the behavior occurring? There's a specific term we use to describe a behavior that was put on extinction, that was extinguished, and then suddenly reappeared. What is that called? Is this an extinction burst? No, an extinction burst happens during extinction, right? When the behavior increases because of extinction and then reduces. Spontaneous recovery. What is spontaneous recovery? Well, that's a sudden reemergence of a behavior that was previously extinguished through extinction. What happened to Tina? Exactly that, right? All of a sudden, her behavior comes back. Big time, 10 times in one class. This is simply spontaneous recovery. When spontaneous recovery occurs, what's the best reaction? The best reaction is to utilize the same behavior plan that already worked. This is a predictable, a typical outcome of a behavior that was put on extinction, okay? It recovers, it spontaneously recovers, as long as we implement the same behavior plan that we did before. That behavior will quickly reduce back down, okay? So B, we know is our answer. Always read all of your answer choices, especially when studying. Okay, understand why the wrong answers are wrong. It's going to make you better at the test. C, Tina is automatically reinforced by something else in the classroom. We have no indication of that. We have no proof of that. Only use the information they give you in the question. Every question will give you enough information to answer the question. Don't add any of your own information. So C, we can't say for sure. And then D, the teacher most likely reinforced the behavior again. Again, we don't know, right? By all indications, the behavior plan was implemented correctly and the teacher did not do this. The only clear explanation based on our information given is B, spontaneous recovery. 75, while training in RBT, Tim notices that Gina will wait almost 10 seconds before delivering reinforcement to their client. Tim encourages Gina to decrease the latency between the correct response and the reinforcement. In terms of reinforcement, Tim is most likely concerned with what? What is Tim concerned with? Okay. Based on our information, Gina waits 10 seconds before delivering reinforcement to their client. This is way too long, right? What do we know about reinforcement? We know it should be delivered as close to the behavior that we want to reinforce as possible. If we wait 10 seconds, okay, that leaves a lot of time for another behavior to take the place of the behavior we actually want to reinforce. By decreasing the latency, okay, we are doing what? We are closing the gap between the reinforcement and the response, okay? The response and the reinforcement are getting closer. What do we consider that? Okay, what's the closeness of reinforcement to the response? There's a certain word for that. Are we looking at magnitude? Well, are we looking at how much reinforcement we give, right? No, we're looking at time, right? We're looking at the closeness of the reinforcement. So magnitude is not relevant here. What about rate? Rate has to do with the time component. Are we concerned with how much reinforcement is Gina is giving every hour or every day? No, we're looking at individual deliveries of reinforcement and trying to speed up that one response, okay? So rate isn't relevant here. What about contiguity? What is contiguity? Well, that's closeness of reinforcement, right? The closest of the reinforcement to the correct response is important, okay? That influences what behavior you're increasing. It influences what response you're reinforcing, okay? Contiguity has to do with the closeness of reinforcement, which is very important. That's what Tim is trying to focus on here, okay? So C looks like our answer. What about D, ethics? We're not worried about the ethics here, okay? We're worried about the contiguity of reinforcement, that closeness of reinforcement. 76, Tori loves to party with her friends on the weekend. She looks forward to Thursday because that means she can party until Sunday. After a long weekend of going out with her friends, she decides to stay home Monday instead of going to a dinner party with her coworkers. Not attending the dinner party is most likely an effect of what? Okay, so what do we think happened here? We're looking at her behavior as far as not attending the dinner party. However, we know she loves to party, right? So Thursday, she partied all weekend, went out with her friends, got a lot of partying in, okay, a lot of reinforcement. Monday, instead of going to another party, she decided to stay home. What do we think happened? A, an abolishing operation from going to parties all weekend. Sure, that might explain it, right? That seems logical, right? So she became satiated on these parties. The value of parties were reduced. Therefore, on Monday, she didn't go to the party, okay? So an abolishing operation due to partying all weekend seems likely, okay? A looks pretty good. Let's see if we can find a better answer. B, self-control. What do we say about self-control in ABA? It's a misnomer, okay? Self-control is still caused or due to or influenced by the environment, right? Self-control is more of a construct, okay? It's not an actual thing. It's still, our behavior is always influenced by the environment, whether we realize it or not, okay? So B would not be the best answer. C, parties have lost their reinforcing properties permanently because Tori is satiated. Okay, that word permanently throws this one out, right? Deprivation and satiation, abolishing operations, establishing operations, okay, don't permanently affect the value of reinforcers. Okay, they temporarily, right? So we have to eliminate this because parties, Tori might be satiated, parties might have lost their reinforcing properties, but not necessarily permanently. C is out. D, Tori is in a state of deprivation in relation to hanging out with her friends. Is Tori deprived of her friends or satiated, right? Well, she hung out with them all weekend, so she wasn't deprived. She's most likely satiated, right? So there's probably an abolishing operation going on. This is the best answer, given our answer choices. Not attending the dinner party is most likely an effect of an abolishing operation from going to parties all weekend. Okay, make sure you understand that question. It's a good example of finding the best answer based on the answer choices we're given, okay, and a good way to think about different abolishing operation and establishing operation scenarios, which can give people some difficulty. 77, Bryn is working on functional communication with her daughter. She wants her daughter to make requests appropriately. Bryn will play a song that she knows her daughter does not like. Only when Bryn's daughter says, "Please stop playing the song," will Bryn stop playing the song, which leads to more requests from her daughter. Stopping the song is what? Okay, again, a lot of information, right? What are we looking at? We're looking at stopping the song, okay? So stopping the song is what in this scenario? Well, based on our answer choices, we know it's a reinforcement or punishment question. So where do we start? We start with, does the behavior increase or does the behavior decrease? Bryn wants her daughter to make request, okay? So when Bryn's daughter makes a request, right, she stops the song, which is the consequence. And then in the future, more requests from her daughter happen. So what happened to the behavior? It increased. So we know it's reinforcement. Now we look, was something added or something taken away? Well, Bryn's daughter makes a request. Bryn's mom, or Bryn's daughter makes the request. Bryn stops the song. She takes away the song, right? And then the behavior increases. Removal, right, is negative. So after the request, the song is removed, the behavior increases. What are we looking at? We're looking at negative reinforcement. Stopping the song is negative reinforcement. Song is on. Bryn's daughter says, "Please stop playing the song." Bryn removes the song. Negative. Responses go up. Reinforcement. Stopping the song is B. Negative reinforcement. Okay. You should never miss reinforcement punishment questions. If you study a lot, they become very easy. Even if not, you can break them down, okay, very simply by asking yourself, does the behavior increase or decrease? Are we adding or taking away something? The hardest part about these questions is identifying what is the behavior we're looking at, what is the consequence we're looking at, okay, and then seeing how they're related. Okay, 78. Consider the different instructional methodologies used in ABA. What two methodologies benefit from a fast-paced style of teaching? All right, so remember, we have our 5 instructional methodologies that you will need to know. They will ask you questions about them. Okay, we have discrete trial teaching, we have incidental/naturalistic teaching, we have precision teaching, personalized system of instruction, and direct instruction. What two methodologies that we just listed benefit from a fast-paced style of teaching? Are we looking at A, discrete trial and incidental teaching? Well, we know discrete trial is fast-paced, right? We're delivering a lot of SDs, a lot of consequences very rapidly. Incidental teaching, however, is naturalistic, okay? So we're letting the teaching kind of occur naturally. So it's just dependent on what's occurring in our current environment, okay? So incidental teaching doesn't necessarily benefit from either style. It's just whatever you're given. So A is out. B, personalized instruction and direct instruction. Well, personalized instruction is dependent on self-paced instruction, so it's dependent on the learner, okay? Personalized instruction is all about pacing, okay? What works best for the person. Might be fast, might be slow. It just depends, okay? So we know B is not it. What about C, discrete trial and direct instruction? Well, we know discrete trial is fast-paced. What about direct instruction? Direct instruction also benefits from a fast-paced style of teaching, right? We're talking about choral responding, okay, scripted lectures, and fast-paced teaching, okay? So C, both of these benefit from a fast-paced style of teaching. What about D? Well, we know direct instruction does. Incidental teaching, we just talked about it, okay, naturalistic. It just depends on what's given to us. It's not always fast-paced, it's not always slow-paced. So the only answer where two methodologies benefit from a fast-paced style of teaching is C, discrete trial and direct instruction. 79, when designing a treatment package, there are several things a behavior analyst should consider. Which of the following is not something that should be taken into consideration when designing treatments? Okay, so as a behavior analyst, it's now going to be your job to design these treatment packages, and there's a lot of stuff you need to think about, okay? Which of the following of these answer choices is not something that should be taken into consideration? A, the resources available to the staff. Do you need to consider the resources available to you? Well, absolutely. If you want to develop a treatment package using some sort of reinforcement, we need to be sure that reinforcement is available, right? You should always consider what is available to you, especially in a home environment. Some homes have access to more things than others. That's a big part of the treatment package. What about B? What naturally occurring reinforcers are available in relation to treatment? Do you need to consider what skills and behaviors you teach and reduce, how the natural environment will respond? What is going to reinforce those skills, okay, or those behaviors after we're done? That is something we need to think about, okay? If we're going to teach a skill where no naturally occurring reinforcers are available, how will that skill ever maintain? How will that skill ever generalize? So B is something to definitely consider. C, the convenience of the staff. Are we worried about how convenient a treatment package is for our staff? Not necessarily, okay? We want to go within reason, but really the last thing we should be thinking about is, are we inconveniencing the staff, okay? It's all about the client, all about the person we're working with. As long as our treatment package is effective and can be implemented, the convenience of the staff, okay, is not high on the priority list, right? So far C is the best answer. What about D? What the parent is willing to implement outside of service delivery. Should we consider what happens outside of service? Absolutely. We might only be with the client 15, 10, 20 hours a week. Whatever happens outside of service is just as important, okay? If we only give ABA twice a week and it never happens outside of service, that's like dieting twice a week. It's not going to be effective. We need parent buy-in. We need the parent to implement what we have designed outside of service, so we have to consider it when designing treatments. The last thing we need to consider is the convenience of the staff. Finally, 80, AJ is a nonverbal 5-year-old who receives services in a clinical setting. AJ's team uses errorless teaching with him when working on receptive color identification and matching. AJ will now wait for a physical prompt before selecting a color when given an SD. What best describes AJ as he relates to prompting? Okay. What describes AJ's relation to prompting? Okay. What do we know? We know he has used errorless teaching in the past, right? Or received errorless teaching in the past, which doesn't allow mistakes. Okay. Now, when he's given an SD to select a color, he waits for a physical prompt. Okay. What does that tell you? A, AJ is resistant to prompts. Actually, the opposite, right? He is now anticipating or waiting for these prompts. Okay. B, AJ is prompt dependent. Is AJ dependent on a physical prompt to select a color? It appears so, right? If he's waiting for these physical prompts before selecting a color, he's most likely developed some sort of dependency on the prompt based on this errorless teaching. We now need to work to reduce and fade out these prompts, okay? So B looks like our best answer. What about C? AJ is manipulating the RBTs. Can we measure? Can we observe manipulation? No, we can't assume that's what's occurring. And then D, AJ has regressed in his ability to complete the skill. Well, we don't know if he ever learned the skill in the first place. There's no indication that he did. All we know is he waits for prompts to engage in the correct behavior, which most likely describes a prompt dependency. Okay, that wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you did. We'll be back next Friday with more questions. Be sure to check out our 5th edition task list study guide, now available for purchase. This exam is going to be available next week for purchase, so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, any questions or comments, leave a comment below or email me. Other than that, keep studying hard, and I'll see you soon.